There is a subtle but profound difference between chasing and presence, a difference that separates those who are constantly seeking validation from those who naturally command it. Chasing at its core reveals attachment. It exposes a need, a desire that is not balanced by self-assurance, a longing that has not yet been tempered by inner stability. When a person chases, they unconsciously broadcast a message: Yisrai, I am incomplete without your recognition. I require your attention to feel whole. There is a visible restlessness in chasing, a tension that manifests in words, actions, and even energy. It is a vibration that others can sense, often without them even understanding why they are drawn to it or pushed away. Chasing is exhausting because it requires energy to be continuously directed outward, to be invested in outcomes that cannot be guaranteed. It is a form of giving without reciprocity, and it signals to the world that one's value is conditional on another's response. Presence, on the other hand, is the quiet opposite. Presence reveals power. It signals that your energy, your value, and your worth exist independently of external validation. When someone embodies presence, they do not seek approval. They create it by the mere fact of their being. There is an effortless magnetism in this, a pull that does not need manipulation or effort. Presence is rooted in self-possession. It comes from understanding one's own standards, one's boundaries, and one's priorities so thoroughly that the opinions or behaviors of others do not destabilize them. It is a calm certainty that radiates outward, compelling attention without having to demand it. While chasing often leaves people anxious, frustrated, or depleted, presence leaves people curious, intrigued, and drawn toward the source of this unwavering energy. Presence is power because it signals alignment, stability, and a kind of unshakable authority over oneself that others instinctively respect. To chase is to react, it is to respond to perceived lack, to try to fill emptiness by seeking external confirmation. Chasing often arises from fear of rejection, fear of losing someone, fear of not being enough. This fear manifests in repeated messages, in over-communicating, in showing up too often or too intensely, in bending over backward to gain approval or affection. But no amount of effort can mask the energy of need. People can sense it at a subconscious level. It does not inspire desire, it triggers a sense of imbalance. When one chases, the power in the dynamic shifts away from the chaser. By pursuing, you signal that your energy, your attention, and your focus are negotiable. And negotiable energy is rarely respected or valued. The paradox is that the more one chases, the less attention one receives because the dynamic becomes distorted. People do not respond to desperation, they respond to authority, to certainty, to calm control. Presence is the anchor in the storm of relational dynamics. It is the conscious decision to hold space for oneself rather than to surrender it in the hope of someone else's approval. Presence is knowing that your attention is your most precious resource and that it should not be dispersed carelessly or directed toward those who have not earned it. When a person demonstrates presence, they are often quiet, restrained, and selective. They do not over-explain themselves, they do not overcommit, and they do not overextend in attempts to gain recognition. Instead, they act from clarity, discernment, and purpose. Their energy is contained, refined, and deliberate, and this containment is magnetic. It forces others to step up, to approach with intentionality, and to demonstrate their own worthiness in response. Presence commands a different kind of attention, one that is conscious, deliberate, and respectful. It turns interactions into exchanges of value rather than acts of pursuit. Chasing also distorts perception. When one chases, one is focused on outcomes rather than on being. There is a preoccupation with the other person's actions, reactions, and responses. The chaser invests energy in trying to control what is ultimately uncontrollable, which is the choices, feelings, and decisions of someone else. This external orientation reduces clarity, increases anxiety, and diminishes authenticity. In contrast, presence is inwardly anchored. It focuses on self-mastery rather than external validation. The individual who embodies presence is not distracted by the need to manipulate perception or reaction because they understand that their value is inherent and that what aligns with them will naturally gravitate toward them. Presence is sovereignty over one's own emotional landscape. It is a refusal to surrender power to the whims of others, and this refusal is palpable to those around them. It is what makes others stop, notice, and respect even without words being exchanged. Chasing is also inherently unsustainable. It requires constant input of energy that is rarely reciprocated in the exact measure needed. It is an endless cycle of seeking, hoping, and adapting. Presence, in contrast, is sustainable because it emanates from an internal reservoir that is continually replenished through self-awareness, self-care, and self-respect. The energy of presence is regenerative. It attracts people and opportunities that are aligned while naturally repelling those that are misaligned. It is selective, discerning, and powerful in its economy. Presence transforms relationships from transactions to magnetism. People are drawn to it not because it is needy, but because it is complete. They are compelled by the quiet authority of a person who does not chase because they do not need to. They recognize instinctively that such a person is valuable, centered, and intentional. True power lies not in movement, but in stillness. The chaser moves because they feel incomplete without reciprocation. The one who embodies presence remains steady because they know their completeness is non-negotiable. Stillness does not mean passivity. It means mastery over impulses, clarity in intention, and alignment with self. The one who is present can observe the dynamics without being swept into emotional turbulence. This emotional discipline is a form of authority that cannot be faked. It is recognized by others as strength, maturity, and depth. In the landscape of human connection, those who chase are constantly pursuing shadows, while those who are present are shaping reality. Self-worth is one of the most misunderstood qualities in human connection, especially in the realm of attraction, respect, and influence. Many believe that self-worth must be proclaimed, demonstrated through words, or validated externally. But the truth is far deeper. Self-worth is felt, not announced. It is an energy that radiates from the core of a person, a quiet certainty that does not seek permission, approval, or recognition. Those who feel their own worth do not need to explain it, justify it, or prove it. Their confidence is not performative, it is intrinsic. It is the difference between speaking from a place of insecurity and speaking from a place of knowing. When self-worth is felt, it is magnetic, undeniable, and quietly compelling. Whereas when it is announced, it often reveals a void, a reliance on validation that undermines the very thing it seeks to assert. The desire to announce self-worth often comes from fear. Fear that if it is not spoken, it will not be seen. Fear that if it is not defended, it will be diminished. Fear that if it is not proclaimed, it will not exist in the eyes of others. This is why so many people spend their lives signaling their value through words, through achievements, through possessions, or through external measures that can be quantified or observed. But no amount of announcement can substitute for the inner experience of being enough. Words are fragile. They are fleeting. They can be ignored, misinterpreted, or dismissed. True self-worth does not require validation from the outside because it is anchored in something far more permanent: self-awareness, integrity, and alignment with one's own values. When self-worth is felt, it shows up in subtle ways that are far more powerful than any declaration. It is present in the way a person carries themselves, their posture, their calm in moments of chaos, their refusal to compromise their boundaries for the comfort of others. It is present in their energy, which does not fluctuate wildly based on attention or approval from others. They do not need to insist that they are worthy because the truth of it vibrates naturally from them. People can sense it without a single word being spoken. There is a resonance in felt self-worth, an aura of certainty that draws attention, respect, and admiration effortlessly. The energy itself communicates value more clearly than speech ever could. Consider the difference between a person who constantly tells others they are confident versus someone whose confidence is simply lived. The first may talk about achievements, assert their opinions repeatedly, or attempt to demonstrate dominance in social interactions. But underneath, the energy often carries tension, insecurity, and a subtle need for acknowledgement. The second does not need to narrate their confidence. It is woven into their every movement, every glance, every choice. Others notice, not because they are told to, but because the presence of certainty is inherently attractive and disarming. This is the essence of felt self-worth. It does not rely on persuasion. It is self-evident. Felt self-worth also governs how a person responds to challenges, rejection, or criticism. Those who announce their worth often react defensively, striving to protect a narrative they are trying to maintain. Their value feels contingent, fragile, and dependent on external validation. In contrast, someone whose worth is felt from within responds with calm, measured energy. They understand that external opinions cannot diminish what is inherent. Rejection becomes data, not a judgment on their value. Criticism is considered, but it does not destabilize their self-perception. This emotional stability is a hallmark of power and presence. It signals maturity, self-possession, and authority in a way that declarations never can. Felt self-worth is also selective in its engagement. A person who embodies it does not scatter attention or energy indiscriminately. They do not chase approval, nor do they settle for interactions that are disrespectful, draining, or misaligned with their principles. They create a standard of interaction by simply holding their energy intact. When approached, they are present, engaged, and generous, but never desperate. Their worth is not contingent on outcomes. It is inherent in the quality of being itself. Others sense this immediately. There is a magnetism to someone who operates from intrinsic value because it communicates security, stability, and the absence of neediness. It is important to understand that felt self-worth is not arrogance. It is not about believing oneself superior or more deserving than others. Rather, it is a quiet recognition of intrinsic value, a refusal to measure oneself against fleeting social metrics or the opinions of others. It is an alignment with one's essence, a consistent acknowledgement that one's presence, actions, and existence have meaning independent of approval. People with this quality rarely feel compelled to justify themselves because they are already grounded in certainty. Their energy is unshakable, calm, and radiant, creating an invisible gravitational pull. Felt self-worth also shapes decisions and relationships. A person who embodies this quality does not compromise their integrity to gain acceptance or affection. They do not tolerate behavior that undermines their value. They select environments, relationships, and opportunities that resonate with their standards, and they do so with ease and authority. Their presence commands respect because it communicates a non-negotiable standard. They know their value, and so must others who wish to engage with them meaningfully. Even in silence, felt self-worth speaks volumes. A glance, a pause, a measured tone of voice, all can convey confidence and clarity. There is no need for announcements because the energy itself conveys certainty. This is why true power is subtle. It is rooted not in exhibition but in embodiment. The world senses it instinctively because energy, when aligned, is more persuasive than words. Those who rely on announcement, in contrast, often expend tremendous energy trying to convince others of something they do not fully feel within themselves. They seek attention as proof of existence, validation as a substitute for presence, and recognition as evidence of value. This creates imbalance, insecurity, and dependency. Felt self-worth eliminates all of this because it operates from a place of internal sufficiency. It does not ask for recognition, it creates it naturally, effortlessly, and inevitably. Felt self-worth is a lifetime practice. It grows from self-awareness, reflection, and discipline. It is nurtured through the cultivation of boundaries, emotional mastery, and alignment with one's purpose. It is strengthened by integrity in action, consistency in behavior, and resilience in adversity. And as it strengthens, the subtle yet undeniable energy of self-worth radiates outward, shaping interactions, attracting respect, and commanding attention without ever needing to be spoken. Silence is often misunderstood in human interaction. Many see it as emptiness, absence, or weakness. They fear it, rush to fill it, and constantly feel compelled to speak, explain, justify, or perform. But silence, when wielded with awareness, is not emptiness, it is a strategic magnetic presence. Silence creates space for recognition. It allows others to step forward, to engage, and to acknowledge value that cannot be commanded or manufactured. When a person constantly fills every moment with words, attention, or action, they inadvertently close the space where recognition can arise naturally. They override the subtle dynamics of attraction, respect, and influence. Silence, in contrast, signals confidence, self-possession, and a refusal to chase validation. It is the stillness that makes the world stop and notice, the pause that amplifies presence, the restraint that communicates authority. When we speak without necessity, when we over-communicate, when we over-explain ourselves, we risk diluting our energy. Every word carries a vibration, and when too many are thrown outward in reaction to others, they lose potency. Silence preserves energy. Silence allows the weight of presence to be felt without interference. It is in the pauses, in the space between words and actions, that others begin to sense significance, that they begin to realize that your attention is valuable, your energy is rare, and your presence is meaningful. Silence is not absence of communication. It is intentional communication through the most subtle and powerful channels: energy, posture, calm, and measured interaction. When someone feels compelled to chase attention or affirmation, it is often because the space has been left unclaimed or has been filled with reactive energy. Chasing is a response to emptiness, a desperate attempt to secure recognition that cannot emerge naturally because the environment is already cluttered with noise. But when silence is embraced, it creates a vacuum, not a vacuum of emptiness, but a vacuum of invitation. Others are drawn in to fill it. They are compelled to engage, to act, to show value, and to recognize significance because the stillness demands a response. It is in this way that silence becomes an instrument of influence. It is not a tactic of manipulation, it is a reflection of mastery, self-possession, and self-respect. Silence also cultivates perception. In the presence of someone who speaks only when meaningful, others begin to pay closer attention. Their awareness sharpens because the usual distractions, noise, and performative behaviors are absent. Words no longer carry casual weight, they carry intention. Every glance, every gesture, every measured interaction becomes amplified. Recognition emerges naturally because it is not forced. People notice effort, energy, and alignment that are consistent and intentional. When silence is present, the absence of constant noise creates space for true value to be recognized and appreciated. Another aspect of silence is the power it gives in observing dynamics. When a person does not immediately respond to every impulse, every message, or every perceived slight, they gain clarity. They see patterns instead of reacting to isolated events. They can discern intention instead of being distracted by the surface level of words. Silence is not indifference, it is discernment. It allows the individual to choose engagement wisely, to respond with precision rather than reaction, and to recognize who is aligned with their standards versus who is not. This observation is only possible when one is still. In stillness, energy is conserved. In stillness, attention is sharpened. In stillness, the world's response becomes a reflection of true alignment, not chaos or noise. In relationships, silence creates an unusual but powerful space. Many people attempt to prove themselves constantly through words, gestures, or over-involvement. They believe that visibility equals value. But visibility without intentionality often signals neediness rather than worth. Silence, in contrast, communicates confidence without explanation. It signals that one's presence is not negotiable, that one's attention is a choice, and that engagement is earned rather than demanded. When a woman remains silent instead of chasing, she allows a man or anyone to approach her with intention. She does not diminish herself to be seen, she simply exists fully, creating a space where recognition is natural and deserved. People begin to notice, to act, to respond, not because they are forced to, but because the energy of her stillness commands it. Silence also amplifies personal power because it encourages introspection and self-mastery. When one is not constantly seeking validation or broadcasting value, one has the opportunity to refine their energy, their intentions, and their standards. The energy is turned inward and strengthened, and this inward cultivation inevitably radiates outward. People sense this refinement because energy cannot be hidden. It speaks louder than words ever could. A person who is comfortable with silence exudes self-possession, integrity, and emotional discipline. These qualities cannot be manufactured. They are felt. Recognition emerges because energy, when anchored in stillness and intentionality, becomes magnetic. Importantly, silence is not passive. It is active restraint. It is the choice to allow one's presence to communicate value instead of forcing recognition through action or speech. It is the conscious decision to preserve one's energy, protect one's boundaries, and allow others to reveal their intentions. When used consistently, silence becomes a filter that attracts those aligned with one's standards and repels those who are misaligned. It does not push people away indiscriminately. It amplifies value selectively. People begin to step up to meet the energy of the silent individual, offering attention, respect, and recognition naturally because the space for it exists and has been consciously created. Silence also teaches others to value energy and presence. When someone is used to constant availability, they unconsciously devalue it. When someone withdraws energy, allowing space for recognition, others are forced to recalibrate. They become aware of what was previously overlooked. Recognition cannot occur in chaos or overexposure. It requires contrast, patience, and intention. Silence provides that contrast. It elevates the individual by making their engagement rare, meaningful, and powerful. Those who are not accustomed to respecting boundaries, energy, or presence will be naturally filtered out, leaving only those capable of true recognition. Even in communication, silence has a role. A measured pause before responding, a calm presence in a conversation, or the decision to withhold commentary until it carries weight, all these amplify influence. People feel the power in restraint. They notice the energy behind the words because it is not diluted by excessive effort or overexposure. Silence forces reflection, encourages awareness, and positions recognition as a natural consequence of engagement rather than a demanded result. Emotional discipline is one of the most underestimated forms of power in human relationships, yet it is one of the most magnetic qualities a person can embody. It is not about suppressing feelings, pretending nothing affects you, or becoming cold and detached. Emotional discipline is the mastery of one's inner state. It is the ability to respond rather than react, to act with intention rather than impulse, and to navigate emotions with clarity and awareness. It is the quiet force that signals strength, stability, and self-possession. When a person demonstrates emotional discipline, they naturally attract emotional maturity in others because maturity resonates with maturity. The energy of someone who is anchored, composed, and intentional draws those who can meet it while filtering out the ones who cannot. Emotional discipline is magnetic not because it demands attention, but because it communicates self, mastery, clarity, and an unspoken standard of respect and alignment. To understand why emotional discipline attracts emotional maturity, one must first recognize the nature of emotional imbalance. Those who lack emotional discipline tend to respond impulsively, overreact, or allow their feelings to dictate behavior without consideration. They chase, they plead, they over-explain, they create drama, and they seek validation from others to regulate their own emotional state. Their energy is scattered, inconsistent, and unpredictable. This unpredictability breeds chaos in interactions, draws imbalance, and often attracts those who are either similarly reactive or those who seek to exploit weakness. Emotional immaturity tends to mirror emotional immaturity. It cannot recognize or resonate with the energy of a person who is controlled, grounded, and intentional. Because the vibration of discipline is foreign to chaos, emotional discipline, in contrast, creates an energy of steadiness. It is the practice of noticing emotions without being enslaved by them, of feeling deeply but responding wisely, of acknowledging desires, frustrations, and impulses while maintaining alignment with one's standards and long-term vision. A person who has emotional discipline is not easily swayed by the fluctuating moods, behaviors, or manipulations of others. They maintain composure under pressure. They do not lash out or collapse under provocation. They do not amplify chaos, nor do they chase validation. Instead, they observe, discern, and act in ways that honor their own integrity and boundaries. This energy, subtle yet undeniable, signals to others that the individual is anchored in self-respect and clarity. It communicates a standard without having to voice it explicitly, and that standard naturally attracts those who possess the capacity to engage on the same level. When someone encounters a person with emotional discipline, the dynamic of interaction changes immediately. There is no need for testing, pleading, or overcompensation because the energy itself demands alignment. Emotional maturity. In those who are drawn to this energy manifests as patience, consistency, accountability, and intentionality. People who are emotionally mature recognize the value of steady, aligned energy. They respond rather than react, act, engage with clarity rather than chaos, and mirror the discipline they sense in the other person. Emotional discipline, therefore, functions as a filter and magnet simultaneously. It repels volatility and immaturity while drawing in responsibility, depth, and self-possession. It establishes an unspoken code. If you wish to engage, meet me here. If not, move aside. There is no argument, no coercion, no pleading, only energy. One of the critical aspects of emotional discipline is the practice of restraint. This does not mean suppressing feelings. It means choosing how, when, and with whom to express them. It is the ability to pause before reacting, to consider consequences, and to maintain alignment with one's values even when provoked or tempted to compromise. This restraint demonstrates self-awareness and self-mastery, qualities that are inherently attractive to emotionally mature individuals. When someone senses that they cannot destabilize another person through impulsive behavior, manipulation, or emotional provocation, they are challenged to elevate themselves. The presence of discipline creates a mirror in which others see their own capacity or lack thereof for self-regulation, reflection, and conscious engagement. Another aspect of emotional discipline is consistency. People who are disciplined in their emotions exhibit predictability in their reactions, not in the sense of being robotic or dull, but in the sense of being reliable, intentional, and stable. Their moods, actions, and responses do not swing wildly based on external circumstances or fleeting impulses. This consistency fosters trust, safety, and respect. Emotional maturity thrives in environments of stability because it allows space for reflection, growth, and genuine connection. In contrast, inconsistency and impulsivity trigger defensiveness, insecurity, and chaos. Emotional discipline is therefore magnetic because it creates fertile ground for maturity to flourish. Emotional discipline also attracts maturity because it communicates self, respect, and boundaries. People who are disciplined do not tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or negligence from others. They are willing to disengage when alignment is absent, and they do not bend their energy to satisfy the whims of others. This clarity of standards challenges others to rise to the occasion. Emotional maturity is characterized by accountability, responsibility, and alignment with one's own principles. Those who cannot meet the standard are naturally filtered out, while those who can rise to the energy are drawn in. Discipline, in this sense, functions as a natural magnet for quality and a filter for misalignment. Importantly, emotional discipline is cultivated, not inherent. It requires self-awareness, reflection, and daily practice. It is built through observing one's impulses, understanding triggers, and developing strategies to maintain alignment even under pressure. It grows through self-responsibility, the practice of emotional regulation, and the conscious refinement of energy. As discipline strengthens, the magnetic quality of the individual increases. They no longer need to chase attention, manipulate perception, or force recognition. The energy itself commands respect, evokes admiration, and naturally attracts those who possess the emotional maturity to engage meaningfully. Emotional discipline also enhances decision-making. People who act from emotional stability make choices that reflect long-term vision, self-respect, and clarity rather than temporary impulses or fleeting desires. They are not swayed by drama, flattery, or chaos. They respond with integrity. This energy communicates strength and stability, which emotionally mature individuals sense immediately. It draws people who are capable of consistency, accountability, and reciprocity. It creates a dynamic in which interactions are intentional, meaningful, and aligned rather than reactive, draining, or superficial. Ultimately, emotional discipline is not about controlling others. It is about mastering oneself. It is the conscious cultivation of internal power that radiates outward, shaping the dynamics of every interaction. The energy of discipline attracts those who can operate on the same level. People capable of emotional maturity, responsibility, and alignment. It filters out volatility, chaos, and immaturity, creating relationships and connections that are balanced, intentional, and resonant. Emotional discipline is quiet, subtle, and often invisible to the casual observer, but its effects are profound. It transforms the way people engage, respond, and recognize value. Standards are the invisible architecture of personal power. They define what is acceptable, what is aligned, and what is worthy of one's time, attention, and energy. Yet standards are often misunderstood as rigid rules or limitations. In reality, they are the silent language through which value is communicated, the unspoken code that reveals self-respect and shapes the behavior of others. High-value individuals rarely have to announce their standards. They exist in every choice they make, every boundary they set, and every interaction they allow themselves to engage in. Standards are not about control or manipulation. They are about self-possession. They are the energy that signals worth without needing to be declared, the invisible force that separates those who chase from those who command. When someone has clear standards, they automatically create a filter for the people and energy that enter their life. They do not need to explain why certain behaviors are unacceptable or why they refuse to compromise their values. Their actions, choices, and presence communicate everything necessary. Standards are energy in motion. They are felt before they are spoken. A person who holds their standards consistently signals that their attention is not freely available to everyone, that their energy is valuable, and that their presence is earned. This silent communication is far more powerful than words because it cannot be ignored, negotiated, or discounted. It is lived, not narrated. Consider the impact of consistency in standards. Someone who consistently enforces boundaries, whether it's about respect, time, or emotional availability, creates clarity in their interactions. Others begin to understand, often unconsciously, what is required to engage meaningfully with them. There is no need for lectures, ultimatums, or explanations. The energy itself communicates the message. This is the essence of silent authority. People respond not because they have been told to, but because they sense the non-negotiable value embedded in the energy of standards. Standards, when upheld with integrity, become a natural magnet for respect, alignment, and recognition. They create a gravitational field in which only those who are capable of meeting the energy are drawn in. Standards also communicate value because they demonstrate self-awareness. When a person knows what they will and will not tolerate, they show that they understand themselves, their needs, and their worth. They do not compromise out of fear of rejection or desire for approval. Their choices reflect internal alignment, not external pressure. This self-knowledge is inherently attractive and powerful because it signals maturity, clarity, and independence. Others instinctively recognize the presence of someone who is anchored in their standards, and they respond accordingly. The energy of a person who lives by standards communicates the message that I am enough as I am. My attention, time, and energy are not for bargaining or debate. Engage with me meaningfully or step aside. Standards are also a form of energy management. Every interaction, every commitment, and every choice consumes emotional, mental, and physical energy. By holding standards, a person protects their energy from being depleted by misalignment, disrespect, or chaos. They create a life that aligns with their values, goals, and vision. In doing so, they communicate worth without needing to verbalize it. People feel this energy, often without consciously realizing why they are drawn to it or repelled by it. Standards make the invisible visible. They reveal what is important and what is tolerated through action, presence, and restraint rather than argument or persuasion. Another dimension of standards is that they create space for self-respect. When someone upholds standards, they are communicating to themselves, first off, I respect myself, and therefore I will not compromise my integrity for the convenience or approval of others. This internal acknowledgement is the foundation of self-worth. People can sense when someone respects themselves, and this recognition translates into external recognition. In other words, when standards are held, they force others to step up to the level of integrity, respect, and alignment. Standards are a silent test of consistency, character, and maturity. Those who meet them are naturally drawn in, those who cannot are gently filtered out. Standards are also about boundaries. Boundaries are the practical application of standards, and they are perhaps the most visible form of silent communication. A boundary communicates limits without needing explanation. It communicates value without needing justification. For example, someone who refuses to tolerate disrespect does not need to argue why. Their reaction or refusal to engage in behavior that violates their boundary communicates the message clearly: respect is required and engagement is conditional upon alignment. Boundaries are the energy-based markers of standards. They define the space a person occupies and communicate the terms of engagement. Importantly, standards are not inflexible. They evolve with awareness, growth, and self-reflection. A person who holds standards is not rigid or judgmental. They are adaptable within the framework of alignment and self-respect. The power of standards lies not in control over others, but in control over oneself. When someone consistently aligns their actions, energy, and attention with their internal code of value, they communicate authority, presence, and worth without ever having to announce it. This is why high-value individuals rarely chase or explain. They live their standards. Their energy signals worth so clearly that recognition, respect, and attention become natural consequences rather than outcomes to be demanded or earned through performance. Standards also attract aligned energy because they act as a filter. In life, people are constantly drawn to patterns of energy rather than verbal statements. Those who respect themselves and maintain standards create an environment where only compatible, mature, and intentional individuals can engage meaningfully. Those who are chaotic, disrespectful, or misaligned are naturally excluded, not through argument or confrontation, but through the quiet energy of maintained standards. This silent communication is far more effective than explanation because it operates at the level of perception, energy, and resonance rather than logic alone. Finally, Standards communicate value because they demonstrate presence and intentionality. Someone who lives by standards does not need to chase attention or approval because they have created an energetic framework that signals what is acceptable and what is not. Their worth is embedded in the way they move through life, the choices they make, the boundaries they uphold. Recognition emerges naturally because it is drawn to alignment and integrity. Those who can meet the energy rise to the standard. Those who cannot are gently excluded. Standards are therefore the most powerful form of silent communication, a living demonstration of self-respect, self-possession, and magnetic value that requires no explanation, no justification, and no chase. Many people make the mistake of equating effort with value, believing that the more they chase, the more they give, the harder they try, the more attention or recognition they will earn. They believe that attention is a currency that can be purchased with effort, that showing up excessively, over-communicating, or over-performing will make people see them as worthy. But attention is not drawn to effort, it is drawn to energy. It is the quality of presence, the vibration of confidence, and the alignment of being that magnetizes others, not the amount of effort expended. Effort is visible, measurable, and transactional. Energy is intangible, felt, and transformative. One can chase relentlessly, pouring effort into every interaction, yet remain invisible to those who are attuned to the subtle language of energy. Conversely, someone who radiates aligned, magnetic energy can command attention effortlessly without running, explaining, or performing. Effort often carries a trace of neediness. When a person works excessively to gain attention, their energy betrays underlying attachment, desperation, or lack. It is in the way they overextend themselves, over-communicate, or compromise boundaries in hopes of being seen, acknowledged, or validated. Effort is measurable, but it is often misread as imbalance. People subconsciously detect the difference between energy that is magnetic and effort that is desperate. Effort is heavy, energy is light. Effort demands, energy invites. Effort seeks to manipulate outcomes, energy flows in alignment with reality. Those who chase through effort often find themselves exhausted, frustrated, and frustrated again, because no matter how much they try, effort alone cannot create resonance. Attention responds to vibration, not volume. It responds to presence, not persistence. Energy, in contrast, is cultivated internally. It is the result of self-possession, emotional discipline, and alignment with purpose. It is a vibration that communicates worth, confidence, and magnetic authority without requiring verbal justification or external demonstration. People notice energy before they notice effort. They feel it before they see it. Energy is expressed in posture, tone, calm, boundaries, and the way a person occupies space. It is in the restraint that allows others to step forward, the self-possession that creates curiosity, the quiet command that draws recognition without force. Energy signals completeness, sufficiency, and stability. It communicates, I exist fully in my own right, and my attention is a choice, not a given. One of the most important distinctions between effort and energy is sustainability. Effort is exhausting. It requires constant input, reinforcement, and repetition. It can be observed, quantified, and measured, but it rarely communicates depth or power because it is rooted in scarcity, fear, or attachment. Energy, on the other hand, is regenerative. It is self-sustaining. It emanates naturally from alignment with self and purpose. When someone operates from energy rather than effort, they do not need to chase, over-explain, or prove themselves repeatedly. Their presence alone commands attention, naturally drawing those who are aligned, curious, or receptive. Energy is a silent yet undeniable force that cannot be replicated by effort, no matter how consistent or intense. Attention is also drawn to energy because it signals authenticity. Effort can be performed, energy cannot. Someone can show up, over-communicate, or work hard to appear confident, magnetic, or high value, but if the internal state does not match the external action, it will be sensed subconsciously. People can detect authenticity through subtle cues, body language, tone, eye contact, and energy flow. Energy that is aligned, self-possessed, and coherent communicates truth. It signals that this person is grounded, consistent, and complete in themselves. Effort, when disconnected from energy, feels forced, transactional, and performative. It is rarely magnetic because it lacks resonance. Another critical aspect of energy versus effort is its role in attraction and influence. When energy is magnetic, people are drawn toward it naturally. They respond willingly and enthusiastically because they feel the power, stability, and clarity emanating from the source. They do not need to be persuaded, begged, or chased. Effort, by contrast, can trigger fatigue, indifference, or avoidance because its signals lack imbalance or need. Energy creates space for voluntary recognition. Effort often imposes itself on others. Those who operate from energy command the field, influence outcomes, and attract attention without running or overextending themselves. Effort may open doors temporarily, but it does not sustain connection, intrigue, or admiration. Energy does. Energy also communicates boundaries and self-respect in ways effort cannot. A person who is aligned energetically signals that their attention is precious and cannot be earned through performance alone. They move with intention, engage selectively, and respond with awareness. Effort, by contrast, often bypasses boundaries in the hope of securing validation. It broadcasts desire or neediness, inviting imbalance and testing limits. Energy attracts those capable of meeting the standard, those who can recognize respect and resonate with the vibration being projected. Effort often attracts the opposite. People who take without giving, who drain without alignment, or who confuse business with value. It is important to recognize that energy is cultivated, not given superficially. It comes from self-awareness, emotional discipline, clarity of purpose, and alignment with values. It is rooted in calm self-possession and a sense of sufficiency. When someone embodies energy, they do not react impulsively, chase validation, or overextend themselves. They do not try to impress, manipulate, or demand recognition. Their presence, consistent and intentional, communicates worth, competence, and magnetic authority. This is why attention naturally flows to energy. It resonates on a deeper level than words, actions, or effort ever could. Energy is also silent yet deeply communicative. It is in the pauses, the restraint, the choices, and the alignment with self. People feel it immediately, even before conscious thought. Effort is visible, noticeable, and often exhausting to observe, but it does not create resonance. Energy moves through people, subtly shaping perceptions, drawing recognition, and signaling value. Those who understand this principle do not expend themselves chasing attention. They refine their energy, maintain alignment, and allow recognition to emerge naturally. Energy commands, effort pleads. Energy attracts, effort exhausts. Energy resonates, effort negotiates. Ultimately, the difference is simple yet profound. Effort seeks results, energy embodies value. Effort broadcasts desire, energy radiates presence. Effort works externally to create perception. Energy flows internally, creating a vibration that cannot be ignored. When attention is drawn naturally, it is a reflection of the energy being projected, not the quantity of effort being spent. Those who chase through effort rarely achieve the magnetism they desire, while those who cultivate aligned, magnetic energy command attention effortlessly, consistently, and irreversibly.